the horror series that started it all. All 7 Nightmare on Elm Streets are fully remastered and available on DVD for the very first time. And all 7 DVDs will be available only in a Platinum Series Collector's Box Set. The Platinum Series continues to raise the standard for DVD and features extras you've only dreamed of.
Your wish is my command.
A bonus DVD, the Nightmare Series Encyclopedia, the most comprehensive, mind-blowing features and menus that have ever been created. Plus, interviews with all 7 directors, cast members, and crew, including feature-length commentary from director Wes Craven.
He's real, isn't he?
Great. Back to business.
The first 3D DVD sequence from a major studio, glasses included. Jump to a nightmare scene navigation for all 7 films. And that's not all. Groundbreaking DVD-ROM content including 8 original trivia games, all 7 screenplays, plus your computer will be haunted by interactive Freddy from ToggleThis.com.
You are all my children now.
And after years off the shelves, all 7 films return to video digitally remastered. Each edition includes the film's theatrical trailer and never-before-seen interviews with the film's director, available individually or a commemorative box set. So be sure to get the series that stars Johnny Depp, Lawrence Fishburne, Patricia Arquette, and more.
I am eternal.
Nightmare on Elm Street. Each newly remastered movie is available individually on VHS or commemorative box set, and a Platinum Series DVD set. Original Nightmare also available on DVD. No tricks, just so many treats. It's frightening. Miss me?
It's Halloween time, and one of my favorite franchises of all time is A Nightmare on Elm Street. When you think about the great horror villains, is there any villain more iconic, more incredible, more entertaining to watch than Freddy Krueger? I don't think that there probably is, or ever will be. We just got the A Nightmare on Elm Street 4K collection this year. Naturally, I revisited every entry, watching them on 4K, getting to experience them for the first time in such high definition, like I was at the movie theater. There was nothing cooler than that. But with that came new perceptions, came new ideas, came new opinions on the films. Watching the films like this was eye-opening. It made me see things that I hadn't seen before. It made me think things about the entries in positive and negative lights that are different from previous years. After this experience, it makes perfect sense, during this Halloween season, to re-rank the A Nightmare on Elm Street films. Let's get into it. I don't like sounding like that guy, but I really think I've just come to that conclusion. There can only be one Freddy Krueger, and that's Robert Englund. With that being said, Jackie Earle Haley is the least of our problems with this film. The remake does things different and somehow worse than a movie that came out over 20 years previously. In A Nightmare on Elm Street, the original, we see Freddy come through the wall on spandex. It looks absolutely incredible. In 2010, we see a CGI Freddy come through the wall above Nancy, who is also wearing earbuds, making it seem like she doesn't even want the audience being aware of what's going on in her head, or that she even feels like being a part of this film altogether, come through a wall in such crappy CGI fashion. Why does it look that much worse? There's this AI-generated feel to the film with the exception of Quentin. The rest of this movie just feels so uninspired. It's a star-studded cast with Clancy Brown and others in here, but they don't really seem to be able to resurrect the movie. It just feels flat. But not having Freddy be innocent, which would have been a great twist, and pulling that back, seemed like such a mistake. There could have been a good movie here, I think, but every wrong decision was made. Freddy vs. Jason, it's hard to love it after you learn more about it. The history, the decisions that they made. Let's just say some positive things about Freddy vs. Jason instead. If there's Robert Englund in the film, he never misses. Freddy is absolutely fantastic in this film. There are some extremely great scenes with Freddy, and I love his sensibility. He's more annoyed than anything this entire film, trying to get more victims while Jason just seems to steal them one at a time. The look of Freddy in this is great too, but one of the coolest things is at the end, with that demon Freddy look. Why couldn't we have gotten that Freddy the entire film? That would have been something else. Or, why can't we get a film with that Freddy? Demon Freddy is about the coolest thing ever. When it comes to the makeup designs, it's probably in my top 3. Freddy's Dead is probably one of the most interesting horror films I've ever seen. I don't think there's any peers for Freddy's Dead. Well, what do I mean by that? Tell me another film that has the same sensibility or style of Freddy's Dead. There's really nothing like it. It truly is like a Looney Tunes cartoon. There's also some quirky, weird stuff to this film that's so dark even though it's presented in such a light fashion. Well, once you actually start to watch David Lynch films, especially Twin Peaks, you see exactly what they were going for. Rachel Talalay herself has openly said that Twin Peaks was such this huge influence on the movie, and I totally see it. Admittedly, when I would watch Freddy's Dead, I just saw it as this silly, ridiculous, over-the-top film. Once I became a David Lynch fan, I saw what Rachel was doing. There are moments that, if you stop and think about them, they're incredibly dark scenes, but they're presented in such this quirky, weird fashion. Freddy's Dead has definitely grown on me. The scene of Carlos getting his ear blown up by Freddy is actually one of the more impressive sequences I've seen. The airplane scene with the John Doe character at the beginning actually looked really great in 4K. I thought it would have cheapened that scene, but actually no. I can appreciate that they had to go into more of Freddy's backstory in this, and in some fashions they did a pretty good job. But if you are going to present stuff like that, a darker tone probably would have been more beneficial. It just has a style that, unfortunately, 2 out of 10 people seem to like. When it comes to the 89 slasher films between Halloween, Friday the 13th, and A Nightmare on Elm Street, to me The Dream Child is far and away the best of the 3. The Dream Child had so much going against it. Stephen Hopkins, the director, essentially had to do 2 years worth of work into a 10 or 11th month turnaround to get this film out. I can't imagine the way that they made this film back in the day. Again, just like any Nightmare on Elm Street, Robert Englund is on. I actually think Freddy has one of his best personas in 5. He's quirky, sure, but there's a dark, sinister nature that's back in 5 that was missing in 4. I also think that this film has the greatest special effects scene probably of the decade. The scene of Dan on the motorcycle is probably one of the more chaotic, painful scenes I've ever witnessed, especially now in 4K. Greta getting fed her own stomach by Chef Freddy, it's something to see. Sure, there's things about this film that don't exactly make sense. Freddy's going through the dreams of the kid to make Alice have dreams. It's a little off, but what can you do? The reality is that the script for Dream Child was passed on as early as when they were making Dream Warriors, and they went back to it because they figured the audience for these films were aging as well as the film series was itself. It's not really a bad way of thinking. The Dream Child was good, but it could have been even better had the film come out in 1990 as opposed to less than a year later in 1989. I feel like my Elm Street card could be pulled for this one for having the original film anywhere except 1 or 2, but the reality is I just like certain entries more. Now, Wes Craven made a legendary timeless horror film. A Nightmare on Elm Street is a classic. Some of my favorite scenes are actually scenes that really don't have Freddy in them much at all. The scene of seeing Tina in the body bag is such a creepy looking image. I just can't fathom that they did that. I mean, it's so dark. And every time I watch it, I'm like, geez, I feel like that should have gotten an X rating because of how grotesque and morbid it is. But I'm glad that they did it. Seeing those weird slugs in the film too, what the hell was that all about? That gives me the willies. There's this notion that Freddy's more serious in part 1, and while that's true, I still think the humor was there. I think it's pretty funny that when the face of Freddy gets ripped off in the initial part of the film, he has this funny looking skeleton face. To me, it's like a laugh face that I like so much. Sure, Freddy's more serious in part 1, but it still looked like he was having a pretty good time. The character of Nancy is not a character that I dislike whatsoever. It's just not my favorite, nor is this my favorite Heather Langenkamp performance. Quite frankly, I think she got better as the films went on, but we'll talk more about that down the road. New Nightmare is a film that I have grown more love for over the last recent years. My biggest complaints before were that the film was kind of slow in the first half. While I'm not going to straight up disagree with myself, when I watched this film on 4K not long ago, I was pretty mesmerized by it. There is such this great, palpable tone that Wes Craven created in New Nightmare. I think when you watch the Heather Langenkamp Elm Street films, New Nightmare is far and away her best performance. It's the most grounded, it feels the most realistic, and granted it should. She's playing herself, not Nancy in the film. But there's such a dark nature once we see the death of her husband in this film that just carries me through to that second half where things really take off. The look of Freddy in this film can't be understated either. It really is creepy. Watching this film for what felt like the first time again in 4K made me experience this Freddy in a way that I felt like I hadn't before. This is such a great Freddy performance. Robert had to keep some things classic in the way that we know Freddy as, but there is this really evil nature to the new Nightmare Freddy. The look and makeup is perfect too. I really love it. The final scenes where we get to see this hell world that Freddy's in is really great visually too. It's like we're really in hell. One of my favorite scenes in this film, for what it's worth, is that TV talk show scene where Robert bursts out dressed as Freddy to surprise the audience. If you get a good look at that shot of Freddy, the makeup is actually really cool. New Nightmare may be one of the best horror films of the 90s. Dream Warriors is a film that I don't need to tell you anything that you don't already know. It's about as great as a slasher film as there ever is. Chuck Russell had a lot going against him. He had to get things back on track, so to speak, and get the fans happy again. I think Dream Warriors created the blueprint for what a great slasher sequel does. You take characters from the previous entry and carry their stories forward more, while adding new characters that you eventually care just as much about. It's a delicate balance that we've seen time and time and again either fail or not succeed as well, and Dream Warriors does it about as good as any film I've ever seen done. The special effects in this film are still considered some of the best of all time. Seeing that huge demon slug Freddy almost swallow Patricia Arquette whole is amazing to see, especially in 4K. The optical effects in here are just as great. Whenever you see Joey almost fall into this hell pit, it's pretty inventive. I mean, there's so many things I could go into about this film. I love the balance between Heather and the kids. They really trust her, and she's going through it just the same. I think if you were going to introduce someone to 80s horror, Dream Warriors is probably the blueprint film to do it with. The Elm Street film that's jumped the highest on my ranking from any other has to be Dream Master. This is a film that I have grown to love more and more with each passing year. If you were going to ask me which horror film has the best soundtrack, by God, it's A Nightmare on Elm Street 4. Billy Idol, Go West, The Sea Hags, The Vinyls, Vinnie Vincent Invasion, The Fat Boys. The list goes on. This movie has the best soundtrack I've ever heard. Robert Englund's described this as the MTV Nightmare on Elm Street. Whether I agree with that or not is neither here or there, but Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4 has to be the most entertaining, visually, dialogue-wise, and probably just as well as special effects. I'm not going to say that they're necessarily better than 3, but they're at least just as good. There are sequences in here that are just insane to watch. You might even say mad, screaming mad. Screaming Mad George did some of the greatest horror effects ever in this film. The Roach Motel sequence is something so bizarre and visually striking that when you watch it, your jaw is just on the floor. Even the more quirky kills with the wanna-suck face somehow feels painful seeing Freddy suck the life out of this poor little girl in the classroom. Patricia Arquette was replaced by Tuesday Knight in this film, and this may be an unpopular opinion, but I actually prefer Tuesday Knight. I thought she brought more to the role, as well as also having a really cool song running from this nightmare that plays in the beginning of the film. There's nothing wrong with Patricia, don't get me wrong, but I'm a Tuesday Knight guy. I just like her a little bit more. Alice has to be one of my favorite characters from the series, as well as being my favorite final girl in horror, period. I love the arc of her character. It's believable, grounded in reality with what she has to deal with becoming more open in public, as well as dealing with what's going on with the dream world and Freddy and her taking all of her friends. It's a perfectly struck balance, I feel. For the people that prefer Dream Warriors, I get it. I just ask you, which film has the better soundtrack? You can't just say it's Dream Warriors because of one Dawkins song. The Part 4 soundtrack is perfect. And if you're going to say that they're pretty even-keeled, well, the music has to take it over to the top with 4. This film absolutely changed my life. Before I became a horror fanatic, one of the first horror films I really sat down and watched was Freddy's Revenge. When my mom was going to rent me A Nightmare on Elm Street from Blockbuster because I wanted to watch it, it was already rented out, so she brought me Part 2. This fateful night would be where I watched my first 80s horror film, and as soon as I got done watching it, I immediately started it right over. Seeing Freddy burst out of Jesse in Grady's bedroom has to be one of the most shocking scenes I've ever seen in my life. Just like the way Robert Russler described the audiences in the movie theater being dead silent out of fear of what they were seeing, I was the same. There was no hollering or screaming. My jaw was just on the floor, leaned up in my bed against the back wall. It was so striking to see. The performance of Freddy in this film by Robert Englund is by far and away my favorite. This is my new nightmare, if that makes any sense. What do I mean? Well, there are people that say, well, 2 was the one that broke the rules. And I totally agree. You can't deny that it breaks the rules. I feel like this Freddy is the devil, wanting more than just a dream world, wanting to come into reality, using Jesse to possess him. Also, when it comes to horror films, a lot of characters, when they act scared, I feel like there's movie scared. But in part 2, Mark Patton's performance, I genuinely feel his terror. I genuinely feel how frightened he is. The way he screams, the faces he makes when Freddy appears. I believe him. It's one of my most favorite horror performances, if you can believe it. I feel like his performance in horror is just truly underrated. But I don't think that's just the reason which makes it unique and different. Sure, that's a cool element to have, but at the end of the day, I think Freddy's Revenge is just a plain, scary horror film. And when you watch all the Elm Streets, scary isn't going to be the word you use for most of them. But I think if that word was going to be used to describe one Elm Street film, in all caps, part 2 is scary. I love this horror film. So guys, that's my ranking for the Nightmare on Elm Street series. I can't wait to see what you guys agree or disagree with in this list. Thanks for watching, drop your comment below, and happy Halloween. Giant thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. Without you guys, this would not be possible. To get behind the scenes photos, videos, music, private live streams, and much more, you can subscribe to my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Thank you to my patrons.